Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 17 Draft Recap. We just had a thrilling conclusion to the Gym Leader format in Season 16. We're already on to 17 via our regular schedule here. I am going to be your host for this draft recap. I am IllLogic. I'm the coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. As always, I'm joined by my co-host SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets,
Hey, everybody.
as well as Michael, coach of the Route 1 Birbs.
Hey there, how's it going?
All right, so we have quite a bit to go through here. First off, Steve, the manner in which we tend to do these drafts is we're starting to get into a little bit of a cycle here, and it sounds like we were up for a doubles season, according to what we try to get done here. So, as commissioner of the league, tell us about the format, number of teams, and everything that went on with the creation of the season 17 format.
So for season 17, we did decide to go back to doubles, doing a full double season. This time doing a point draft. Last winter when we did the double season, it was just a no point draft. So, very high power level, lots of things going there. But this time actually having to budget your points, figure it out. And then in addition, we wanted to try something a little different and did low tiers. So, we did, tier everything, 0 through 19, I believe. And then, picked a cutoff and just kept, the lower half of power, which is more like 60 to 80% of the mons. But regardless, kind of cutting off the top end, giving some other mons time to shine, to change things up a little bit. When we opened signups for the league, we got pretty good numbers here. Unfortunately, we did not get enough to run a beginner league this season, and there are some new coaches that still want to play anyways. So we have one of those in the league this time, and that will bring us to a grand total of 20 this season. It is our biggest single draft we've ever done. We did decide to keep it with one draft. I did kind of open it up to discussion there, and there's a good amount of mons, but it did get a little tight in the top tiers, especially towards the end. But overall, 20 mons, 20 teams, each drafting 11 mons seemed pretty reasonable. Michael, do you want to go a little more into the tiering and draft itself?
Yeah, so the tiering was a little bit awkward. This season is, 6v6 doubles, and there's a decent number of tier lists that you can reference if you're looking to do like a VGC draft league. But not a lot for 6v6. We based it on a lot of sheets that we saw for VGC leagues, assuming that, most of it should transfer over. There might be some things that are a little bit better in 6v6 or not strategy or mon wise. But we took that, did some shuffling around, kind of made an average of the different lists we saw, and then opened it up kind of to the league to say, like, all right, is there anything here that you think should move up or down? Had our usual tiering discussion, and ended up with the list that we had, which I think actually turned out pretty well. It was really interesting to see what mons, kind of ended up being a high tier or a low tier. I have mostly singles experience, and we've done mostly single leagues here, trying to get to do some more doubles more regularly, but there's some stuff in the low tiers that is really, really good in singles, and it'll be interesting to see how it actually does down here.
Yeah, this was a crazy draft for sure, with 20 coaches trying to pick from nothing that's too overpowered here. It feels like in many drafts you can kind of pick one or two higher tier mons and let them carry the team. You can't really do that here. The higher tier mons are much weaker and much less able to carry a team, but then again, they're going against weaker competition themselves. So perhaps it's going to be about finding those top tiers that do thrive in this low tier environment, or perhaps actually getting some of those bargain deals to go around. And with less doubles experience overall in the league, that means that we have some interesting options here and some interesting choices that coaches think will be their key to success. We've got 20 teams to go over, so let's not wait anymore and let's get into the first pick. And with the first overall pick, it's the Akron Agrons, coached by Joe 8. And that first overall pick did go to IllLogic, maybe a nice example of the power level we're working with. But IllLogic, a lot of really neat utility here in doubles. Follows that up with Duraludon, Toadscroll, Typhlosion, Gardevoir, Kingdra, Overquill, Venusaur, Sneasel, Hisui, Hatchram, and Mightyena there at the bottom. Steve, first thing that stands out to me is there's some very fast speed tiers. What do you see with speeds and typings?
Yeah, starting off, taking a look at the overall stats. As you did mention, the team is overall top three in terms of average speed, as well as having some ways to boost that, which Michael will go further into. However, they are the lowest average HP and bottom three in terms of attack, so there could be some issues on that side. Taking a look at their speed, they have a fairly decent range from 115 down to 49, with notably a gap between their 2 base 100s to their 4 base 85s, so a little bit of an issue there. Looking at their defensive matchup, they have just a single resist to Dragon, Flying, Ice, and Normal, as well as dual resist with more weaknesses than that to Fire and Ground, so a couple of typing concerns for them to look out for. Michael, what kind of move pools do these bots have?
Yeah, so he's got one fake out user, and not a ton of strong priority options, but he does have that priority Thunderwave coming from the Illumise. Priority Tailwind and Weather from that are the big things, though, with the Typhlosion and Venusaur being great in Sun, the Overquill and Kingdra benefiting from Rain with speed boosting abilities, and Typhlosion throwing off huge eruptions. They do have some options for Trick Room removal as well as Intimidate on the team, Rage Powder on Toadscruel, and really big, strong spread attacks from the Typhlosion. I think makes a pretty cool team. Nate, what do you think of it overall?
Yeah, this is interesting in a lot of ways, as you say, to control speed with Tailwind and Weathers and such, but not that much there that's just off the rip all that fast. And I wonder if their Trick Room options are good enough to deal with, but that's the power level and reliability of those speed options. And heck, the power behind the Weathers cannot be understated. So a lot here to like, and the Agrons are a consistent competitor, so I think there's a lot to like here. We're going to move on to the second pick now. And with the second pick, the Evergrande Empoleon, the nice slick new logo here. Their second pick was the Enamorous Therian, followed by Glastrier, Slowking Galar, Embor, Flygon, Basculegion Male, Brute Bonnet, Rotom Berserker, Calyrex, and Regirock. Steve, aside from the couple of meme picks that I know we adore with the Glastrier as well as the Calyrex, what are you looking at in terms of typings and stats?
This team is very much defined by its Trick Room mode. They are the slowest average speed by far in the league, but with that getting top 3 in terms of HP, the top attack, the top defense, and top 3 in terms of special defense. So very much building towards that Trick Room mode. Overall, their speed range at the high end is 100 with Flygon down to their couple of base 30s. One notable speed gap between the 78 Basculegion to the 65 Embor, but really emphasizing that Trick Room. So we'll see if it works for him. In terms of typing, they have a single resist to Ghost and dual resist with more weaknesses to Rock. So overall, a pretty good defensive spread that they can hopefully make good use of with all that bulk. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so they've got one fake out user, which is nice. Not a ton of standout priority, though. No hazard removal. Hazard's not as good, but still no removal is unfortunate. Like you said, they have great Trick Room setting with excellent payoffs. Weather counter in Chilly Reception to remove opposing team's weather, as well as give Glastrier a defensive buff. Pair that with Rage Powder on Brute Bonnet, and then 3 Pokemon that learn Pollen Puff or Heal Pulse to support the teammates, and this team looks pretty dang bulky and strong in Trick Room. What do you think, Nate?
I think you two absolutely nailed it there. The Trick Room mode is scary. The Glow King actually fits really well in here. Don't sleep on the Embor and Enamorous as huge abusers in that. I wonder if there are enough raw stats there whenever you're outside of Trick Room to be able to take care of things. But similar to the last team, just in the exact opposite speed manner, there's a lot of reliability here and a lot of neat tricks that this team can pull off. So look forward to seeing what they can come up with. Let's move on to the next team. And with the third pick, it's the defending champion Newport Noctowls, coached by Elf Owls. Their first pick was Hydreigon, following it up with Tinkaton, Infernape, Reuniclus, Clodsire, Vivalon, Cloyster, Raikou, Trevenant, Golduck, and Noctowl. Steve, aside from the mascot pick, those top mons are at the beginning of the draft. Whew, insane. How did we let him get away with this? What do the typing and speeds look like?
Yeah, starting off with a brief overview of the stats. Top 3 in terms of average HP and special attack, and bottom 3 in terms of average attack. So definitely emphasizing that special offense a little more. Looking at their speeds, they have a range from Raikou's 115 down to Clodsire's 20. There is one notable speed gap between Golduck and the Cloyster Noctowl at 70, with a couple more in the lower speeds that aren't as relevant. In terms of the typing of the Noctowls, they have a single resist to the Dragon type, as well as dual resist to Flying and Rock. So those are the types really to take a look at to kind of exploit this team. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
It looks pretty dang good. He's got 2 fake out users with a lot of strong priority offense options. That Golduck with the Cloud9 ability can negate opposing weather. Defog on Noctowl is okay removal, but no removal outside of that. Excellent pivoting all around the team, though. Good Tailwind setters and Trick Room removers / counters. 2 Ally Switch users and a Rage Powder user, as well as Pollen Puff on that Vivalon with the Rage Powder. Makes it an amazing supportive piece. Just a really well built team. Nate, anything else to add?
I absolutely agree. This, at first glance, looks like the best, most well-constructed team. You could potentially say that there's a lot riding on something like the Tinkaton as a great fake out user and providing several of those resists, but as soon as you think that you've gotten through anything there, suddenly the Reuniclus comes out and it's a Trick Room game, or the Cloister comes out with a Shell Smash. There's so much love about this team. Jimmy is always doing a great job drafting. In my eyes, this is probably the team to beat and looking for a repeat champion here. But don't speak too soon. We've still got 17 more teams to go through. With the 4th pick, it's the Wooper Boopers going back with the Indeedee Veil here with their first round selection, followed by Azelf, Palmot, Muck Alola, Espathra, Garganical, Orthworm, Fletchner, Dockspun, Iron Leaves, and Gligar. There sure seem to be a lot of one particular type here, Steve. We know that the Boopers love to favor that Indeedee, and they did get it with the first round pick. How's that affect the stats and typings?
Yeah, looking at their average stats, they are notably the bottom overall in terms of special attack and bottom 3 in terms of special defense, drafting a lot of physical mons around the couple psychic types they have. Taking a look at their speed at the top end, they have Azelf at 115 down to Garganacle's 35. There's a notable speed gap from Fletchender's 84 to Orthworm's 65, as well as some other speed gaps in the lower speed ranges. Taking a brief look at the typing, the defensive integrity of the team is quite solid. With only Ice and Water having single resists and really being those spammable types to look at. Michael, what about the move pools?
Yeah, so there's 2 fake out users, but one is Indeedee, so you have that kind of non-synergy with the psychic terrain. Speaking of which, Azelf having Levitate not being able to benefit from that psychic terrain is unfortunate. Fletchinder is their only source of removal, which is definitely not great, but they do have solid pivoting with the Shed Tail option from the Orthworm being particularly interesting. Decent Trick Room setting, but not a lot of Tailwind. 3 ally switch mons, but no partner healing. They do have access to Wide Guard, though, as a nice support option. Nate, what do you think of the team?
This is really interesting. We get a lot of psych types, but well complemented by things like Garganicle and Muck to eat up a lot of those weaknesses. But I'm not sure that there's enough diversity there still. If something like Azelf and Espathra almost feel like these were mons that were just too good to pass up at the time, and maybe there is some decent synergy there. But I expect that there will be a couple of changes to this team to kind of fix it up a little bit. But knowing the Boopers, they will come to a nice conclusion and settle down in the second half of the season at the very least. Let's move on to the next team. And number 5 pick, it's going to be the Summit County Psyducks, leading off with the Tornadus Therian, but look at the next couple, it's Wheezing Regigigas. Oh boy, and following that up with Mesprit, Hippowdon, Lycanroc, the Hisuian Decidueye, Empoleon, Luxray, Colossal, and Morgrem. A couple of interesting little pairs here, Steve. How well do those translate overall to stats and typings?
Well, Regigigas certainly always helps the stats. Notably here for this team is going to bring them up to the top 3 average attack, and without the negative of its ability, it might be able to put that to good use. In terms of speed, as one of the overall better ranges, going from Tornadus Therian's 121 at the high end down to Colossal's 30. There is a speed gap between Regigigas' 100 and Mesprit's 80, and that's a very notable area, so something that could be unfortunate, as well as some at the lower ends as well. In terms of typing, once again, very similar to the Wooper Boopers. 2 types that are good into them, Ice and Water, although these are both now dual resist with more weaknesses instead of singles. So a little bit better defensive synergy. But Michael, how about the move pools?
They've got okay priority options, definitely carried by that strong priority from Lycanroc. 1 fake out user being the Morgrem. They have 2 hazard removers and solid pivoting overall. Good tailwind setting, definitely, with Trick Room on Mesprit and Priority Thunderwave as other kinds of speed control options. No partner healing and ally switch on Mesprit is their only form of redirection, but they do have some fun synergies. Wheezing being paired with the Regigigas to remove its slow start. The Sand with Lycanroc to boost its speed. I'd love to see like a water spread move on Empoleon into the steam engine on the Colossal to boost its speed after it's teared out of that fire weakness. Nate, what do you think, besides me taking forever?
Absolutely. Plus, I mean, it could combine with the Decidueye for some interesting pledge stuff. This is definitely a team defined by a couple of those cores, and yet I think the team is decently well constructed to be able to work outside of those duos as well. Something like Wheezing by itself is still really solid. Hippowdon can still be a wall that's really solid and hits a little harder than you may think. There's a lot here to like, actually, just outside of having a couple of those gimmicks with Regigigas, which, hey, is still good enough to be able to win regionals and such, so don't underestimate just bringing that as well. A lot to like here. I wonder if the coach is going to be all in this season. I think they took a season off. Sounds like they're getting really into it, so let's see how creative they can get, which could take them a long way. Let's check out the next team. And with the number 6 pick, hey, well, did you look at that? It's Steve's Waterdeep Wobbuffets picking the Jirachi in the first round, followed up with Noivern, Zoror, Kasui, Blaziken, Granbull, Swampert, Decidueye, Mandibuzz, Electros, Venomoth, and Duosion. I see all 3 starters here. That sounds like Steve. See a couple of interesting options such as Boomburst with ghost types. What are you looking at here, Steve?
Yeah, taking a look at the typing and stats. Top overall in terms of average special attack, really helped out by the bottom tier pickup with the massive special attack, as well as bottom 3 in terms of defense. Overall, a little on the frailer side. Taking a look at speed, a range from Noivern's 123 to Duosion's 30 is a pretty nice range. There is a gap in the lower ranges from Granbull to Duosion, but that's not really significant. In terms of typing, dual resist with more weaknesses for flying, ghost, ice, and rock, but everything having at least 2 resist really does put this in a good spot defensively. Michael, what about the move pools?
Yeah, so you don't have particularly strong priority options, and you don't have a fake out user, but you do have Intimidate, which is nice. 3 good defoggers, absolutely incredible pivoting with 9 Mons having offensive pivot moves. Great versatility in setting Trick Room or Tailwind. Got some fun options and stuff like Quiver Dance, Baton Pass, or Rage Powder on that Venomoth. Ally Switch on Duosion as well as access to Wide Guard. And of course, you've got the synergy between the Boom Burst and the Steel and Ghost types, as well as options to lots of Pledge shenanigans. Should be very fun. What do you think, Nate?
Absolutely. I think my favorite part that you mentioned there was all the pivoting that Steve's got. I find Steve to be a very good team builder. He has a nice plan that draws up every single time here. And with just a bunch of good, solid Mons, it's going to be tough to deduce what the game plan is before the game spirals out of control here. A lot of interesting things you can do for sure with a lot of just good Mons all around here. So let's move on to the next team. And with the 7th overall pick, it's the Corinth Phalanx making their main league debut after a very successful season last time around. They are starting off with the Serena, going into Kilowattrel, Barraskewda, Magmortar, Monkey Dory, Umbreon, Skarmory, Rhyperior, Uxie, Phalanx, and Dipplin. A lot of interesting looking Mons here, Steve. What are we looking at?
So in terms of their stats, overall top 3 in terms of average defense, having some bulky pieces, especially that Rhyperior and Skarmory. Speed, they have at the high end Barraskewda, which is one of the fastest Mons available, down to Rhyperior and Dipplin's 40. There is a gap between Kilowattrel's 125 and Monkey Dory's 106, but when 106 is your 3rd fastest, you're in a pretty good spot. Taking a look at their typing, they have a single resist to Dragon and Ghost, as well as a dual resist with a lot of weaknesses to Ice. So those are the types we're going to want to look to spam into this team. Michael, what about the move pool?
Yeah, so they have 1 fake out user and okay priority options. Serena is the only removal, but I think could be pretty solid removal this season. Decent amount of pivoting on this team, but nothing spectacular. They do have good Tailwind setters and Trick Room on Uxie with Rhyperior as a potential Trick Room payoff. Really interested to see how that does this season. Pollen Puff on Dipplin, Ally Switch on Uxie, and Follow Me on Magmortar give them decent support options for their allies as well. So a pretty decent amount of options overall, but nothing that particularly stands out as amazing. Nate, what do you think?
Agreed. There's a little bit of just about everything for sure, and that's nice. I do wonder if some of those offensive options are a little too frail here. Something like the Kilowattrel and Barraskewda, for example, are very fast and pretty darn strong, but could be taken advantage of. And if maybe you end up removing the Serena as well, or the Monkey Dory, and all that's left is, say, an Umbreon and or a Dipplin, I could see things getting a little tricky there. Could require some good coaching, but there are a lot of cool pieces here that the Phalanx, I know, can work around very well. So let's move on to the next pick. With the number 8 pick, it's the Calgary Corviknight, looking to finally get that playoff win after a lot of successful regular seasons, and they're going to lean on their Comfey from the first round to help them get there, along with Weavile, Electivire, Gliscor, Hoopa, Tauros, Delphox, Copperajah, Chestnut, Quaquaval, and the Ariados. Looks like a lot of pretty good Mons here, Steve. I assume that translates to some pretty good stats.
Well, they may have pretty good stats. Well, at least not bad. Overall, average stats, not top 3 or bottom 3 and any specific stat. So at least average, looking pretty good there. Taking a look at the speed specifically, the high end, they have Weavile's 125 down to Copperajah's 30. They do have a gap in the mid to low ranges between Quaquaval's 85 and Hoopa's 70, as well as some speed gaps in their lower tier Mons, which is pretty usual to have. In terms of their typing, they have dual resist with more weaknesses to fire, flying, and ground. So those are the types most effective to spam into this team. Michael, what are your thoughts on the move pools?
Yeah, so they have 1 fake out user, decent priority offense options, but nothing crazy. access to Intimidate is great, as well as sticky webs and lots of other hazards. Quackaball is their only removal, a pretty good remover probably this season, but not one you really want to be wasting the removal on. Solid Tailwind and Trick Room options. Pollen Puff from Comfey with Ally Switch, Follow Me, and Rage Powder redirection on the team, plus Wide Guard gives them some nice support options all around, though. Nate, what do you think?
There's a lot of stuff to like here, but I'm not sure if there's anything that's super outstanding on here. A lot of these mons feel pretty straightforward overall in their roles and what they do. It's going to take, I think, a little bit of creativity from the Corviknight to get the most out of these mons and maybe catch somebody off guard. Hey, I see 3 starters there. Maybe some pledge shenanigans could go on there too. But we'll see maybe what they can come up with and if some of these options can bring them over the top finally. Let's move to the next coach. And with the 9th overall pick making their debut in the WCL, hey, how about the San Jose Sharpedos? Love the logo there. And I also love the Weezing Galar as the first overall pick, or not overall, but their first round pick. Followed up with the Typhlosion Hisui, the Cobalion Slacking, Fezandipity, Furret, Inteleon, Bostiff, Oricorio, Thwacky, and Deoxys Defense. A lot of cool picks here, Steve. What does that tell us about these stats and typings?
Starting off, taking a look at the stats, they are the top team in terms of average speed and top 3 in terms of their average defense. So we really have some nice stats here. Taking a look specifically at the speed, they have Inteleon at the high end to 120, down to Weezing Galar 60, a little bit vulnerable at the slower end, especially against some potential Trick Room in the doubles format. They do have a speed gap notably from Thwacky's 80 down to Weezing Galar 60. So outside of Weezing, everything being 80 or up really will leave them susceptible to that Trick Room. Taking a look at typing, they have no flying resists, a single resist to electric and rock, and I noted it down as funny, but they have 5 quad resist to bug, but no normal resist. So, a little bit of interesting there, depending on the Oricorio form, of course. Michael, what about the move pools?
1 fake out user with lots of priority options. Intimidate, 3 hazard removers is nice, and a good amount of pivoting. Quiver Dance and that Dancer ability on Oricorio could be fun, as well as the ability to mix up what forms you're bringing. Cosmic Power Baton Pass on Deoxys could also make for some fun moments, combined with access to all of the pledges. Okay, Tailwind setting and Trick Room on that Deoxys. Weezing and Slaking, though, definitely the standout combination. No partner healing and Follow Me on Furret means they don't have a ton of option for supporting their partners, though. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, this is an interesting squad. It feels a little more fragile than others, not in necessarily the defensive manner, but such that 1 or 2 pieces go down, and I wonder what the game plan ends up being. We talked about it with a couple of teams before. 1 or 2 pieces go down, and the rest of the team kind of left in a little bit of shambles, so that could be interesting to see if they can pick up the slack from some of the other mons going down. Something like Typhlosion and Inteleon go down, and then Weezing is gone, and you're left with the slacking, and maybe support Fezandipity. What are you doing from there? But there are a lot of cool, interesting, creative sets that you can get from these mons. Shout out to something like Furret. I think that could actually come through pretty well for the team as well. But that's going to do it for this one. Let's move on to the last team in the first half of the draft. And with the 10th overall pick out of 20, it's the Pikeville Pups. And they start off with the Skeledirge. I'm not bitter that they sniped that from me at all. I followed that up with the Slowbro, Ribombee, Cyclizar, Ampharos, Toxapex, Charjabug, Mimikyu, Hitmontop, Gastrodon, and Blissey. Steve, a lot of weird picks in here. What are you looking at?
So, taking a look first at the stats, of course, with Blissey there, we see some dramatic skewing here. They are the top 1 in terms of average HP, top 1 in average special defense, and bottom 1 in average attack. Specifically looking at the speed, at the high end they have Ribombee's 124 down to Slowbro's 30 for an excellent range. They do have some gaps, notably from their second fastest Cyclizar at 121 down to Mimikyu's 96. A massive gap there and a very important range, as well as from Mimikyu's 96 down to Hitmontop's 70. Mimikyu kind of breaking that up, but lots of gaps there to take advantage of. In terms of their typing, they have a single resist to Flying, Ground, and Psychic, as well as dual resist with multiple weaknesses to Ghost and Rock. So those are types that they're certainly going to have to take a watch for. Michael, what about the move pools?
So they do have access to 10 different priority attacks, but 8 of those come from the Hitmontop, so actually not a lot of priority outside of that. They do have Intimidate, though. 2 Sticky Web Setters and 2 Rapid Spinners is very fun, though. Not a whole bunch of pivoting on the team, but they do have Shed Tail on that Cyclizar for potentially some cool stuff. Trick Room and Tailwind setters, but not great ones. 3 partner healers but no redirection is decent support, and 2 wide guard users is also going to be pretty nice in some matchups. What do you think of the team overall?
There's a lot of cool stuff here, and a lot of things that it can do, but where exactly does it lead the team to? I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff from individual mons, but I'm not sure it collectively comes together to have all that high of a ceiling for the team. Would be nice to see 1 or 2 more haymakers in there, not something that needs to set up like Quiver Dance or Torch Songs, even though you have all the options to kind of help them a little bit with things like Shed Tail and the Sticky Webs. Just not sure there's enough to take advantage of that. Wonder if maybe get a little more heavy hitting in there. That's going to do it for the first half of the draft. Moving on to team number 11. With the number 11 pick, it's the Close Combat Club, starting off with Volbeat to pair up with that Lumese from number 1, so 1 and 11, picking the Prankster Bugs, followed by Chandelure, Hariyama, Cleavor, Alchemy, Feraligatr, Braviary, Rhydon, Magneton, Exeggutor, Alola, and Medicham. Steve, a lot of cool stuff here. What do you see?
So, starting off taking a look at the stats, with some of these, lower tier mons, they did end up bottom 3 in terms of average special defense, but they can certainly make up for that. In terms of their speed overall, there is a little bit of an issue. Their range is from the high side of Volbeat and Cleavor's 85 to Rhydon's 40. So a pretty big issue there, resulting in a overall pretty average speed to team because they have a lot of things in that 85 to 80 range. But overall, just not, the high side is not there. Taking a look at their typing quickly, they have a single resist to Ghost and Psychic, and then dual resists to Fairy, Flying, and Water. So those are the types that teams will want to try to take advantage of. Michael, what about the move pool?
So they do have 2 fake out users with some decent priority options. Defog on Braviary and Cleavor are okay defoggers, but not great. They'd like to be hitting things more. The free hazards on Stone Eggs from Cleavor are nice, though. Okay pivoting, Tail Glow and Baton Pass as a potential funny thing from the Volbeat. The priority Tailwind and Thunder Wave are definitely the big features of this team, though. It seems like it really, really needs to have that Tailwind up. Braviary is an additional Tailwind setter, but not really one you want to be clicking it with. 3 Trick Room setters and okay payoffs and stuff like the Rhydon and the Exeggutor, but nothing crazy there. No redirection or partner healing, but Decorate is funny from the Alchemy, and they do have Wide Guard, so that's something. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, this is an interestingly built team. I think that you can look at kind of the micro setup and the macro setup of a game. There are a lot of really good things that the team can do, but it needs to be in the right situation or in order to be able to get there. It's up to John to be able to pilot the team into that situation, and if so, I think it'll be greatly rewarded. As you mentioned, with a lot of interesting Tailwind and Trick Room options, it could just be figuring out the correct one to go into and leaning into that mode against a specific team. We'll see if they have any success or not, and we're going to move on to pick number 12. And with the number 12 pick, it's the Hippo Hides moving their way into the main league here, starting off with the Gudra Hisui, followed by Gengar, Staraptor, Espeon, Lokix, Blastoise, Mudsdale, Houndoom, Bellibolt, Virizion, and Skuntank. I see a lot of interesting mons here, Steve. What do they add up to in terms of typings and stats?
Well, we have another team here where the average base stats are neither top 3 nor bottom 3 anywhere, so overall average enough. Taking a look specifically at the speed, they have Gengar and Espeon at their high side at 110, down to Mudsdale's 35 at the bottom end. They do have one notable speed gap between Blastoise's 78 down to Gudra Hisui's 60, a couple others in the lower speeds, but that's the main one to take a look at there. Taking a look at their typing, they have no resist to Dragon, so Dragon spam could be quite good into this team, as well as a single resist to Fairy and a dual resist with more weaknesses to Ice. So a couple of types to take advantage of there. Michael, how do the move pools look?
They have 1 fake out user and access to Intimidate. Mediocre hazard setting, though, with Blastoise as the removal option. Not fantastic pivoting either. They do have 2 fast, frail Trick Room setters and Tailwind on Staraptor, so they have those options, but not really great options for actually clicking them. 2 life do users and no redirection means that, I don't know, there isn't a whole lot from the move pool that speaks to me here. Nate, do you think any of the individual pieces can work together to pull something off?
Yeah, that's interesting. I do see a good bit of sameness here, right? A lot of the pieces earlier, the Gengar, the Espeon, and the Houndoom, all kind of doing about the same thing, and they're relatively fragile, along with even the Staraptor, Lokix, Virizion, all kind of trying to do the same thing as kind of fragile offensive pieces, with the defensive pieces kind of able to set up a little bit. They don't let the Gudra get out of control, or the Blastoise, or the Mudsdale, the Bellibolt. But I don't know if those two sides can reconcile with each other well enough. If you end up going full defensive, you can take advantage of that. Full offensive, you can take advantage of that. It'll be interesting to see how the Hides decide to maneuver this team, or if maybe they want to get a couple of glue pieces that may try to be available there too. Let's move on to the next team. And with pick number 13, also moving into the main league, it's the Rocky Mountain Cloisters. And oh boy, they're making a splash with their first couple picks. Look at that, the Gothrita and Poltergeist immediately, followed up by the Snorlax, Lapras, Grafaiai, Hitmonlee, the Grookey Gang, Dondozo, Revavroom, Hydrapple, and Charizard. An interesting strategy here, Steve, with some lower tier picks to free up space for the higher tier picks later on. I assume that does not spell good news for the stats.
Yeah, the stats are a little bit of a trouble here. Worst overall average defense, bottom 3 special attack, bottom 3 in terms of speed. But bottom 3 speed could be an advantage in Trick Room. Taking a look overall at the speed, though, range has Grafaiai's 110 down to Snorlax's 30, with a notable speed gap between Hitmonlee's 87 down to Grookey's 65. Taking a look at the typing, they have a single resist to Dark, Dragon, Flying, and Psychic. A lot of types that you're able to spam quite well into this team. Michael, what about the move pools?
Well, there are 3 fake out users, but 2 of them are not fully evolved. Almost no hazard setting, and Hitmonlee is their removal option. Minimal pivoting. They have 2 not fully evolved Trick Room users, but they have okay payoffs and stuff like the Dondozo or the Snorlax. Lots of partner healing options, though, plus Hospitality, Rage Powder, and Wide Guard as well as potential synergies, stuff like the Grassy Terrain with Unburden, as well as possibly Priority Sunny Day from Grafaiai for Charizard. Has definitely some interesting possibilities, but we'll see if they're actually able to make use of them. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, this is such an interesting squad, right? Of those not fully evolved mons, and yet a lot of the tools that they have are very good. And I wonder if there will be enough to be able to support something like a Snorlax trying to get out of control, or a Dondozo, which can function a very similar way, or support a Charizard that's trying to go offensive, or just set up terrain for Hitmonlee. This seems like maybe there's even higher payoff than some of these other teams we've talked about, but is so much more fragile and delicate in this balance that it's needed to pull off something that may try to bring a couple of these not fully evolved mons, even if the tools they bring are good. Wonder if the stats are enough to help carry it or not. Let's move on to the next team. And with pick number 14, another newcomer to the main league here, the Rocket City Zigzagoons looking fly there with their logo, as well as the Rotom Heat that they picked in the first round, followed up by Crocodile, Meanshao, Alomomola, Lucario, Meowstic, Passimian, Superior, Piloswine, Bombardier, and the Squawkabilly. Steve, I see a lot of elements here of pretty solid draft teams, although I'm not sure about doubles. We'll see or not. What do the stats and typings look like?
So taking a look at the average stats here, the team is bottom 3 in terms of their average special attack and the worst overall in terms of their special defense, but they do have top 3 in terms of speed and will take advantage before their opponent ideally. Their speed overall, they have Superior at the top end, 113 down to Piloswine's 50. They do have a speed gap between Passimian's 80 down to Almamamola's 65. They notably also have 6 Mons in that 92 to 80 range, so a very crowded speed tier for them. Taking a look at their typing, they have a single resist to Dragon, Fairy, Fighting, Flying, and Normal, as well as a dual resist with more weaknesses to Water. So a lot of exploitable types into this. Will really need to rely on their offensive presence. Michael, what about the move pools?
They've got 2 fake out users and some decent physical priority options. Double Intimidate is nice, but no hazard removal. Okay pivoting with a double parting shot is fun. Access to Tailwind and Trick Room. Lucario is their only partner healer, though, with no redirection, so not a lot of support for their allies in the middle of the match, though. What do you think, Nate?
I think that is a big part of this for sure. Protect may be the favorite move for this team to help get off some of those support moves that don't come quite as easily or naturally for some other teams. We'd be able to wait a turn for an Icy Wind or for an Electro Web or something to that nature, or be able to set up a Tailwind. There are some interesting, really good raw pieces here. Superior can get out of control for such a late round pick, for example. There's raw power between those first 3 picks. Just wonder if they'll have the time to put everything together, or if the match is going to go too quickly for them. We'll find out as we throw them into the fire of the main league. Let's move on to the next pick. And with the 15th pick, would you look at that, it's Michael in the Route 1 Birbs picking the Electabuzz, who notably has had some success in this league with the first round pick, followed by Haxorus, Cinderace, Wartortle early, Braviary, Hisui, Slowking, Zoroark, Breloom, Vikavolt, Articuno, and the Alolan Sandslash at the end there. It's a cool looking team, Steve, but what are we looking at?
So in terms of stats, the team overall is bottom 3 in terms of average HP, but otherwise looking fine. For the speed, they have a pretty good range from Cinderace 119 down to Slowking's 30. There is one notable speed gap between Articuno's 85 and Breloom 70 with some other low tier ones. Taking a look at some typing, there is a single resist to Dragon, Ghost, Normal, Poison, and Rock. Lots of issues there, as well as dual resist with more weaknesses to Fairy. Also notably for this team, they have the worst matchup in the league for Dragon, Electric, Fire, Normal, and Rock. Lots of team types that this team really can struggle with. So we'll have to see if their move pool can make up for that. Michael?
Those types don't exist, so I'm gonna be fine. Well, anyway, I have one fake out user with decent options for priority offense. Not great hazard setting, but I do have access to Sticky Web. I've got 4 hazard removers, which will help with that rocks weakness, some at least. Good pivoting and weather counter options with the chilly reception from Slowking also being able to benefit the Slush Rush on the Sand Slash. 2 Tailwind setters, as well as a Trick Room setter and a potential payoff or counter with the Vikavolt. War Turtle and Slowking are my only partner healers, but I do have Follow Me on Electabuzz for a little bit more support there. What do you think of my team, Nate?
I think there are a lot of really good individual pieces here, and if anybody in the league, I trust you to come up with some very cool, unique, and interesting ways to make these kind of work together. I already saw things like the Slowking and the Sand Slash Alola, obviously. Electabuzz getting one turn of redirection could be huge for this team, be able to set something up. I really want to see make the Braviary Hisui work. There are a lot of really cool pieces in here. I think there's going to be a good amount of stress on you to make them all work, though. As Steve mentioned, a lot of different type weaknesses there. We'll see how you maneuver around those as we get into the final quarter of the draft. And with pick number 16, it's the Corviknight Clobberers, coached by Megu. They're picking the Aqua Tauros first, followed by Bramblegast, Bisharp, Moltres, Pachirisu, Frostlass, Sableye, Altaria, Slowbro, Galar, Weirdeer, and Muck. A lot of cool pieces in here that I think do shine a little more in doubles than others as well. So what do you think, Steve?
So, taking a look at the team overall, bottom 3 in terms of average HP, the couple ghost types really does not help with that. Taking a look at their speed, they have Frostlass at the top, 110 down to 30 with Slowbro, Galar. Couple of speed gaps in the lower speed tiers, but nothing significant there. In terms of their typing, they have a single resist to Dragon, as well as dual resist with more weaknesses to Dark, Ghost, and Rock. So, the typical types we've been seeing, but nothing notable here in terms of the typing. Michael, what about the move pool?
Well, there's one fake out user with some solid physical priority options. Access to Intimidate is great, as well as 2 hazard removers. Cloud9 on that Altaria could be a counter to opposing teams' weather, which is very fun this season. Only 2 real pivot mons, though. 1 Tailwind setter and 2 solid Trick Room setters. Slowbro is their only access to healing their partner, though. They do have Follow Me on Pachirisu. What do you think of the team overall, Nate?
Yeah, this feels like a lot of individual mons that scream out, oh, that's cool, but I'm not sure how well they all work together or what the win con is in any given game. I'm not sure there's enough firepower here, especially not without enough opportunity to set up, which means maybe a lot of reliance on something like the Pachirisu or Sableye to support properly, and maybe trying to buy enough time to be able to get there. Again, there are a lot of cool individual pieces. I'd love to see somebody make Weirder work a little bit more, or the Bisharp try to work a little bit more in our league. I wonder if they're going to get there, or if those middle row support options are going to be enough. Let's move on to my favorite team in the league. Oh no, wait, this isn't the Incineroar. It's my own Buffalo Bouffalant, picking 17th overall with the Shaman Landform this time, followed by the Samurai Hisui, Articuno, Galar, Dunsparce, Florges, Magnezone, Torracat, Torterra, Lycanroc, Dusk Noir, and Viper. Tough for me to speak objectively on the team, so I'll let you two do that. Steve, what do you see?
Well, I'll start off talking about the average stats, top 3 in terms of special attack, to add yourself to the Wobbuffets and Noctowls in having the top 3 special attacks. I wonder if there's a trend with those 3. Taking a look at the speed stats overall, at the high end of the range is Lycanroc's Dusk's 110 down to Dusk Nor's 45. And the rest of this discussion is going to be pretty easy. The speed gaps, there are none. There's absolutely none on this team in terms of types. No concerns there either. So really an overall well-drafted team, well-balanced, but maybe there's a little bit of gaps in the move pool. Michael?
Well, there's one fake out user and strong priority options from Samurott and Lycanroc, but not a ton else in the priority department. No hazard removal, not as big a deal in doubles, but could be awkward in some matchups. Minimal pivoting, but they do have options there. 2 Tailwind setters with Trick Room on Dusk Noir to potentially remove it if their opponent set it. Fallen Pluff on Florges, but no redirection options, and Wide Guard gives them a decent number of options throughout the team, but not a ton of them. Nate, are you pretty happy with your team?
Overall, I think, as Steve mentioned, this is a well-balanced team overall. I think I'd like it a whole lot more if maybe it was a singles team here too, right, in low tiers. But I do wonder if the team will struggle to find enough doubles options to keep up with a lot of the doubles we see here. A lot of teams have leaned into some things specific to doubles, and they absolutely need to get those off to win, but maybe they'll have an easier time against this team, and once they do, I don't know if the team has enough tools to take down some of those doubles-oriented strategies. But again, it is rather technically sound, and there's just good mons in here, so I still have some hope for my Bouffalant, as always. Let's move on to the next team. And with pick number 18, it's the Boulder Boldors from Sasbo, leading off with the Corviknight, followed by Porygon Z, Raichu, Conkeldurr, Goodra, Avalugg, Tentacruel, Yanmega, Shiftry, Salazzle, and Spiritomb. There's some cool pieces in here, maybe some familiar pieces to Sasbo as well. What do you see in terms of typings and stats?
So, taking a look at the average stats, there is nothing significant here. They got some big pieces in certain stats, but they have weaknesses in other ways to cover for it. So, overall, well balanced there. Taking a look at the speed, they have at the high end, Salazzle's 117, down to Avalugg's 28, a reasonable jump all around. There is one speed gap from Goodra and Shiftry's 80 to Corviknight 67, as well as some other in the lower speed ranges, but nothing significant. Taking a look at the typing, they have a single resist to Dragon and Rock, so the team might be overwhelmed by those types, as well as having to resist with a handful of weaknesses to Flying that could be a problematic type for them. Michael, what about the move pool?
They've got some fun stuff. 3 Fake Out users is fantastic disruption. They have 3 Toxic Spike setters, but that is their only hazard potentially to set. They do, however, have 5 Hole Removers, which is insane. Minimal pivoting on the team, unfortunately, though. 3 Tailwind setters and 2 Trick Room setters, though, with nice payoffs in that Trick Room stuff like the Avalugg and the Conkeldurr. Life Dew on Goodra and Ally Switch on Spiritomb gives them some options for partner support, but really not a lot. 2 Wide Guard users is a nice way to finish out looking at this team, though. Nate, what do you think?
I think this is actually a pretty neat team. Looking ahead to my schedule, I noted that this team actually, on the surface, looks like it has just a little bit of everything. The one thing it may struggle in, as you mentioned, maybe struggling a little bit on the pivoting section here, as well as maybe a couple of those resists not being quite up to snuff. But actually, this is a relatively technically sound team. Just a couple of things that they need to make sure to watch out for, right? Protect the Porygon Z whenever it's out. Just be able to set things up properly. But it feels like this is one of those teams that has a lot of those tools to be able to make it work. Shout out to the Boulders for a pretty well-constructed team. Let's move on to the final 2. And with the 19th pick, it's Matt's Cincinnati Incineroar, leading off with Gyarados, followed by Magmar, Registeel, Gallade, Drifblim, Toxtricity, Ditto, Pincurchin, Ambipom, Arboliva, and of course, Crabominable, my favorite. A lot of cool pieces in here from a traditional doubles player. What are you looking at, Steve?
Yep, starting off with the stats, there are, of course, some lower than average stats, really not helped out by that Ditto. Bottom 3 in terms of defense and speed, so some potential concerns there. Looking at their speed again, they have at the high end Ambipom's 115, all the way down to Pincurchin's 15, I believe the slowest mon in the league this season, so it can really abuse that in Trick Room if they so choose. Also looking at their speed, they do have a gap from their fastest mon, Ambipom's 115, down to Magmar at 95 as their next fastest. So really looking more at home in that 80 range, as well as then, that slower speed tiers. Taking a look at their typing, they have a single resist to Dark, Dragon, and Psychic, as well as dual resists with more weaknesses to Fire and Rock. Michael, what about the move pool?
1 Fake Out user and okay priority options. They do have access to Intimidate. Defog on Drifblim is their only removal option, though, so that's a little awkward. Not a lot of pivoting on this team either, but they do have some. Double Unburden synergy, though, with the electric terrain from the Pincurchin, as well as potentially grassy terrain from the Arboliva, is very fun. Drifblim is their only Tailwind setter, though, kind of awkward there again, and they have Trick Room on Gallade and Drifblim. It seems like there's going to be a lot of pressure on this Drifblim to see what roles it can fulfill in what matches. 2 partner healers, though, and Follow Me on Magmar, as well as access to Wide Guard, gives them some pretty decent support options. Nate, what do you think of the team?
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff to like in here, but I do worry about the upper speeds for sure. We talked about that a little bit with the Close Combat Club. Yes, Ambipom is up there. Magmar generally not running speed, which would make the next fastest the Gyarados, and it feels like there's a lot that can take advantage of that giant, drastic speed drop-off. But that said, again, a lot of interesting, really cool pieces here. I love the Arbolifa down there in the lower speeds. Registeel, something that can absolutely win games, and a lot of excellent support options. You mentioned the Drifblim, the Magmar, even Pincurchin, I think has a lot that it can do in a lot of these matchups. And don't underestimate some of the raw power it's got. Maybe try and fix up that speed and a couple of those resistant weaknesses there, and I think we've got the makings of something pretty special here. But with that said, we've only got 1 team left, so let's get to it. And with the final pick, the 20th pick, in the draft, we have Chad and his Seattle Steamrollers looking to make a comeback here. They start off with Saralege and Terrakion, followed by Wochen, Tauros Blaze, Iron Thorns, Rotamo, Crawdont, Cinchino, and look at that bottom row, Abomasnow, Beartic, and Cryogonal, all ice types to finish up the draft. That probably spells doom for some of their tight matchups, but tell us about those and the stats, Steve.
Yep, starting off looking at the stats, they are top 3 in terms of their attack and special defense. A lot of fully evolved great mons here, so getting some good stats from them. Their speed, they have a pretty decent range from Cinchino's 115 to Beartic's 50. They are the second team that has absolutely no speed gaps, even in the lower speed tier, so fantastically well balanced in terms of that. However, as you spelled, the typing does have some issues. Notably, first of all, they have no resist to a dragon type, so that could be an issue. They have a single resist to fairy, fighting, flying, and rock. As well as I did with the Birbs, I will mention that they have the worst in-league matchup to bug, fighting, fire, poison, and steel, with fighting notably having 8 weaknesses, 2 neutralities, and the 1 immunity and Saralege. So concerns there. Michael, what about the move pools?
Well, they don't have access to Fake Out, but they do have some decently strong physical priority options, as well as access to Intimidate. Not a lot of options for hazard setting, but they do have nice 2 removers, going to help with those ice types. Almost no pivoting, though. They got 3 pivot mons on this team, and I believe that's it. No Tailwind or Trick Room options either. Can that be right, too? But they do have some fun snow synergy. They've got the snow from the Abomasnow, but giving the Cryogonal the physical defense buff to go with its nice special defense, as well as able to boost the speed of that Beartic, as well as that then pairs pretty cool with the Flash Fire from the Cerulege as a potential switch into things trying to hit those ice types. Fallen Puff on Wochian and Ally Switch on Cerulege are really their only support options, though, so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this team plays. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, as aside from maybe a little bit lack of momentum, this does scream a Seattle Steamrollers team. Just raw power there, plus a Cinchino over there as well. I wonder if there will be enough to help supplement that power and make sure that the power actually gets off, or if some of the doubles trickery will be a little too overwhelming for them, especially with a couple of those types being a little spammable into the Steamrollers. But with that, that is an overall view of the draft. Still got a couple things to wrap up here as we look forward to the season ahead. So again, with that, the draft is completed, and we have the first couple of weeks here to look ahead to. As time of recording, week 1 is almost finished, so we want to do a couple weeks here at a time. There's some really cool, interesting matchups here between a lot of these teams. Again, with 20 teams, we have 10 matches a week to look at, so quite a bit to go over here. Steve, give me one of the top storylines that you're looking at. What's a team that you're interested to see what they're doing the first couple weeks, maybe just with their team, maybe just being new to the league, or with the matchups that they have?
One of the teams I'm very interested to follow these first couple of weeks is the San Jose Sharpedos. They were the Grass Guzzlers in the previous gym leader season, and that was their first season, and I'm quite interested to see how they do here. They did pretty well in that season, making it into the playoffs. It was a weird format here, so I'm curious to see in a more standard format, even though it's doubles and low tier, it's still a more traditional draft format. See how they do, and right now they're in our top 10. Are they going to stay there, or are they going to fall out after the season? It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, they have a couple of really nice matchups the first couple weeks too to get them off the ground with an interesting little test going on here. Michael, what are you looking at?
Yeah, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on the Rocket City Zigzagoons. They are new to the league this season, untested. Don't really know what to expect for them, but they are going up against the Psyducks week 1, and then week 2 they're going up against myself. Both teams that should be solid tests for them. Give us an idea of what they've got. Don't know if those will be real close matches or blowouts one way or the other. It'd be really interesting to see as we kind of get a feel for this new team.
Absolutely. I like the team that they picked. I wonder how they'll be able to maneuver it, what their mindset is going into this league. I've got kind of a 2-for-1 deal here. So we're looking at week 2. I see a matchup that really stands out to me as the Wooper Boopers and the Summit County Psyducks, 2 teams I'm very interested in to see what they're doing here in the first couple weeks. And they have some interesting tests too. The Psyducks, as mentioned before, facing the Zigzagoons, and Boopers going against the Wobbuffets. A couple teams with a little bit of consistency issues, though it seems like the Boopers have patched that up recently, but that's a kind of a tough schedule to get them started. And the Psyducks, I do like the team that they picked quite a bit. They tend to have a doubles interest, and it seems like they may be a little more invested in the season, but I also feel like I get hyped for them every single season, and they haven't really lived up to that since the season 5 that they won. So a couple of interesting looks there for those teams. That's going to do it for the draft breakdown and look ahead to the first couple of weeks. Join Steve and I here every couple of weeks as we take a look at how the season has been going as we lead you towards the playoffs hunt. We have 20 teams now, and the quality of the teams has just gone up and up and up every season, so it's really a blast to be able to participate in the Wooper Club League. 17 seasons is crazy. Thanks again to Steve and to Michael for joining me for this recap. Hope you all enjoyed, and we'll see you as we start getting recaps, as we start making our way through season 17 of the Wooper Club League.